I'm excited to talk about the future also, but I also want to go back in time, and I know you addressed some of this at the press conference last week, but wanted to follow up. And in this case, going back to the Russell Wilson decision and kind of how this came down. At some point, he came to you guys, if I understand correctly, and said that he wanted to be traded, that he wanted to play somewhere else. What happened next?
Well, there's a lot of conversation, just about looking forward to the future and all, and what were possibilities and what could happen, and kind of in a real general sense for some time, just about how professional sports operate and work and how things happen, and like what are choices and options and all of that. So there was a long, it started 2 years ago, when kind of the word went around that maybe something was brewing, and so we just really, it was just a long conversation, and the majority of my conversation was trying to be in the real world of what was possible, what could possibly happen, and why would you spend a bunch of energy in a direction where there was no place for it to go, and so it was a very complicated situation as it came down to it, because you have another club, you have our club, you have a player, all have input on how the thing could get finalized, and so it was very difficult, and it took a long time to get to the point where it was even where we would start to entertain the thought of it, and so that's kind of, it's just, man, it's hard to explain to you, John, because I'm sorry, Mike, but there was just so much stuff that went down to get there, and it was really amicable, and we got to the business side of things eventually, and said, okay, what is possible and all that, and then we followed the procedure when the time came.
Did you try to convince him otherwise? Did you try to convince him to stay and to not want to go elsewhere?
Well, there was so much compelling, reasoning, that why you would stay, because of all of the history and all of the time spent and all that. That was exactly where I was coming from, just to use the logic of it. And when you've built a relationship over a long period of time, there's great benefits to that, and moving forward and well beyond your career and stuff. So those were all parts of the conversation. And what I continued to say, Mike, that I had no intention of making a move at all while guys were under contract, and we were pleased with what was going on and all. So I fought for the logic of that for a good while, and until it wasn't meaningful anymore, to stick with that.
Well, and I guess that sort of leads me to the idea of how it could have been awkward over the course of the last year. As you said, it had been over a year since he had asked to have this conversation. You must have known throughout last season that Russ has already asked to move on somewhere else. And I know, I've heard about the sign, right? The all-in sign that everybody taps. How challenging is it to lead a team where its natural on-field leader has asked to play somewhere else?
I don't know, Mike. I think you're going into something. We're so much about the business at hand. It was not an issue at all. Really, it wasn't an issue. I mean, it wasn't. I was able to not be concerned about. I mean, everybody's got future. All our guys, all our coaches and our players, everybody's got stuff that they can do, and so we really postpone and compartmentalize any kinds of thoughts that could be a distraction, because that's what you do as a competitor. So that wasn't even a challenge, but. Anyway, so eventually, when season's over, and you eventually have a chance to visit on what's up and what it is going forward, and that's when it took place. So it wasn't, I wouldn't think of it as like, no wonder that the season went the way it went or whatever because of those kinds of thoughts. I mean, guys are always wondering about their contracts and their future and where they fit, and coaches do the same thing.
You said the other day that it was an opportunity more than it being about a negative relationship, which I believe. But I guess the question, if I had been in the press conference last week, I wanted to ask, when you say opportunity, was it an opportunity for him or an opportunity for you as a team?
It was an opportunity in many directions, Mike. The difference in what's just happened with us going into the draft this year and next year. Next year's huge. 2 1s and 2 2s next year. It's a huge change in what happens there. Plus, if you can understand the depth of the kind of the financial burden that you're in with the big contracts, that's diminishes your chances of improving your team, and so that outlook is an outlook you have to live with too as the season comes to an end. That's why John always reminds us and that it's so difficult at the end of the season. There's so many difficult choices you have to make and challenges in putting the thing together again. And each year it's a whole new experience, and it affects a lot of people. And it's just it's the business and it's the job and all, but it is one of the most difficult times that we face. And it's a crucial time too, because you got to set your sights and do right and do well, by your choices you make and all. So, that's kind of how it hits us.
Yeah, you mentioned last week that Jody Allen said that you guys were back in your wheelhouse, that both you and John were back in your wheelhouse. What does that mean?
Well, I thought it was a way to illustrate how tuned in she is, with us and how connected she is to what we're doing. She knows our history. She knows when we started years ago, we made hundreds of deals to try to put our team together, and we had to have a huge mind to envision where it could go and how soon we could get there and all that kind of stuff. And she knows that because she's been around us enough that we're always firing ideas and thoughts and and challenges towards in her way of things that we would like to attempt to do and all that. So she realized that it is a creative moment for us, and we have a lot of stuff that we get to act on, and she gave us the support and the trust that she believes in how we do it and how we go about it by saying that. She realized she's making us strong, and maybe in the area where we can be really effective and all. We're not stuck in the mud. We're not stuck in our ways. We've got all kinds of stuff that she knows well enough by how we've operated, and so she was fired up about that. She knew she was putting us in a place where a lot of exciting things could happen. I think that is part of what adds to the excitement that you're sensing, and it's the energy going forward.
I think what I hear you saying is almost a little bit less constrained, that without a quarterback that you knew was going to be there and was making a certain amount of money, and maybe you have the threat of his departure hanging over you, you can be less constrained with what you do with the roster?
I don't know. You can put it that way, Mike. I don't know if that's what it is, but I think it's just for anybody to understand. And it's just when you get that glimpse into you have options, and you have potential that's awaiting your choices and decision making. It's fun, it's challenging, it's exciting, and that's really what you're sensing, and I hope our fans are too. This is going to be a really interesting next couple months here as it all comes together with the draft and all, and so it's just a good time. I mean, think about it. We're going into this draft. We got picks in next year's draft too, so we have ways to look at things that we can really expand our options and see if we can come up with some cool stuff.
So what comes next at the quarterback spot?
Well, you'll see what we're still working. We're fielding all of the choices that are out there. I'd like to get Gino hooked up and get him back in. He showed us a good deal of command of our offense when he played last year, and he has a terrific understanding of it. So he's out in front of the other guys that are involved in the competition in that regard, and by the time he got a couple games under his belt after sitting for 3 or 4 years, and he functioned in the Jacksonville game as well as you could function, and he had a beautiful game there, and that looked like the culmination of his return, kind of, and unfortunately, we didn't get to capitalize to see what the next step would be because Russ came back and played, but that's he popped the ball around. He was fast with the football and got it out and did some really cool things. So. That's the first thing. There's some other options out there that and we get a lot of calls about guys and stuff. So we're always working it, and we'll see what comes next.